to Teachers Talk Radio. Thank you for listening.
Thanks for downloading this episode from Teachers Talk Radio. You can find the full schedule and listen back to all our shows at ttradio.org. Enjoy the podcast.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live.
Hello and welcome to the Saturday Social with me, Will Mercer. Today I am joined by Ruth Platt and we are going to be talking about initial teacher training, but we're also going to be exploring the wider issue of what makes a great teacher.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
Now, what I want is facts. Teach these boys and girls nothing but facts. Facts alone are wanted in life. Plant nothing else and root out everything else. You can only form the minds of reasoning animals upon facts. Nothing else will ever be of any service to them. This is the principle on which I bring up my own children, and this is the principle on which I bring up these children. Stick to facts, sir. In such terms, I always mentally introduced myself, whether to my private circle or to the public. My square coat, square legs, square shoulders, and even my very neckcloth, trained to seize me by the throat, proved the certainty of my method. I was, in effect, a cannon loaded to the muzzle with hard facts, prepared to blast away all fancy from the tender minds of childhood. Each little picture before me was to be filled, without admixture, with cold, measured figures. No suggestion of imagination, no whim of fancy, was to find its way into that vault of calculation. I am Thomas Gradgrind, a man of facts and nothing but facts. All right, so that quote is from Charles Dickens and Hard Times. And it's a quote which has been on my mind because today, with our topic, we are talking about initial teacher training. But of course, that's related to the sense of what a teacher is and what a teacher should be. So that was one quote. That was from Charles Dickens. And I'm going to contrast it with another one now from, well, I'll give the quote source at the end. Quote, "In the headmaster's quiet office, there sat Dr. Arnold, a man whose gentle eyes and calm, measured voice brought a soft light to the otherwise grim corridors of the school. When the new boys first filed in, he rose from behind his desk with a warm smile and a nod that seemed to promise both firm discipline and heartfelt care. His words, though few, carried the weight of genuine wisdom. Each syllable spoke of duty and the nurturing of the mind, as if assuring every child that beyond the cold pages of textbooks lay a world of kindness and possibility. In that moment, the rough clamour of youthful chatter gave way to a respectful silence. There was in his manner not only a strict adherence to rules, but also a tender regard for the potential within each pupil. It was as though Dr. Arnold himself had transformed the school into a sanctuary, a place where learning was not merely the accumulation of facts, but the awakening of the soul." All right, so that is a composite excerpt from Thomas Hughes's Tom Brown's School Days. Okay, so two very contrasting images of what a teacher can be, or perhaps should be. And like I said earlier, in this show today, we're going to be talking about initial teacher training and the sense of what should go into making an excellent teacher. But luckily, I am joined by the excellent Ruth Platt, who's going to be our guest today. Hello, Ruth, are you there?
Hi, Will. Yes, I'm here.
How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. I always enjoy talking about initial teacher training, and so I'm thrilled to have this time with you to talk about it.
Fantastic, fantastic. So, before we get into our main topic today, would you like to just introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So, my name is Ruth Platt, and I currently am the course director for the BEd in Cambridge at Anglia Ruskin University. We are delivering this course across 3 campuses in Cambridge, Chelmsford, and Peterborough. And I'm a senior lecturer as well, so some of my role includes doing educational research. Before I was working in HE, I worked for a long, long time in schools in London and Cambridge,
Mhm.
and I loved being in the classroom. I was also a senior leader for a couple of years, and when I turned 50, I decided actually I wanted to go and learn a bit more about how to talk about what I was doing in the
Mhm.
classroom. And so that's where I met you, Will, at the University of Cambridge doing our master's degree. So I spent 2 years studying primary education,
Mhm.
and I really enjoyed like developing that ability to talk about pedagogy and how children learn
Mhm.
and what makes great teaching and learning.
Yeah,
So yeah.
fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. Well,
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Meet USA Study, your one-stop platform for guiding students through their college application journey. Access up-to-date resources on universities, programs, scholarships, and application requirements, all in one place. Get easy-to-access tools, personalised timelines, expert tips, application templates, and exclusive webinars with admissions officers to help your student stand out. Visit usastudy.co.uk or call Phil at 0800 612 8271 because every student deserves the opportunity to shine with USA Study.
Yes, that's a really fascinating question, and I think what is, it makes me think about that more traditional model of teacher training.
Mhm.
And with the traditional model of teacher training, you would have kind of on-campus learning where you'd learn a lot of theory of education, and then you'd
Mhm.
have your placement. So that's when you would go into school, and that's where you would like learn how to be a teacher. And there was
Mhm.
a gulf between those two types of learning.
Mm.
And so that kind of personal and professional development was perhaps kind of separated out in those two experiences. So you would maybe
Mhm.
learn that personal learning would happen on the campus, and that professional learning might happen in school. And I think
Mm.
what's interesting about the way we're doing it with the BEd, which is an undergraduate pathway over 3 years, is that we're actually merging those two things together.
Mhm.
So although we've got on-campus learning and placement learning, when we're on campus, what we're doing is we're using a lot of simulated based learning,
Mhm.
where the trainees are having an opportunity to rehearse what it's like to be a teacher. So we're giving them, it's based on scenarios, and so we're encouraging the trainees to think about the theory and the research and the academic learning they've had, and consider how to apply that in really authentic scenario situations which real teachers would have to consider in school.
Mhm.
So before they actually go on to placement and do that in placement learning, learning through doing and observing and practicing being a teacher, they've actually done quite a lot of that already. So we're trying to really bridge that traditional gulf between the two. And I think
Mhm.
in doing that, our course is really addressing their personal and professional development all the way through, and ensuring that they are developing professionally
Mhm.
through the rehearsal, but also personally through um, their academic learning and that kind of learner identity, which is growing all the time. Because we're
Mm.
very aware that our trainees are very young, most of them are kind of 18 or 19. And so that personal development has to be attended to as well. So alongside the academic teaching that we're doing, we've got this really really kind of thorough personal development program where we meet with them, we talk to them about their progress, we help them to identify how their strengths, get them to really articulate what's going well, but also to set targets with them as well, so that they know what their next steps are, both on campus as kind of academic students, but also thinking ahead to placement and what they need to do to prepare for their placement experience.
Okay, so this is an interesting thing I want to talk about a bit here. You obviously working in a sort of university, in a university setting. Now, I don't know if we need to get into all the details, ins and outs of it, but I think generally speaking, there are different types of initial teacher training. Some will be very school focused, others will be more university focused to various degrees. And I think you explained really, really brilliantly there, sort of what the trainees, what the students can get from working in university, on campus, how they can prepare for their placements. So what sort of so on the flip side of that, what are they getting from being on placement in school? So when someone goes away for 3 weeks or 6 weeks off on their placement and then they come back, what are the changes that you see?
So when they are on placement, we see the school mentor as partners in the process of teaching and learning. So they become our partners. They're also teacher educators in our eyes. So the school mentors are going to be facilitating that development whilst our trainees are on placement with them. But we've also created a placement curriculum, which is really incremental and developmental. And it starts off very gently where we ask the trainees just to work one-to-one in small groups. They identify 3 focused children who they'll work with in a very focused way over the 8-week placement. But then as the placement goes on, we ask them to take on more responsibility for initially co-planning and co-teaching, and then planning and teaching independently. However, it's also a curriculum which can be quite personalised. And so if we've got a very confident, for example, trainee who's ready to do a bit more whole class work, there's kind of flexibility in that to do a bit of whole class teaching. Also within that curriculum, we're wanting them to have quite early experiences of being the teacher. So what we've asked them to do is things like read the whole class a story, and if that goes well, to do that every day, to take the register, see how that feels, and then do that every day, or indeed to line them up ready to go to assembly, and to take them to assembly. And all of those those tiny small steps helps the trainees to feel like a teacher, have these moments of feeling like a teacher, and in doing that, kind of really building their confidence. But the placement is seen as a place of kind of really accelerated learning. It's where they take their campus-based learning and see it in practice. It's where they will be faced with many dilemmas and questions, and they'll see practice that they admire and practice that they want to question. And within that kind of space, decide the type of teacher they'd like to be, but at the same time being incredibly respectful of their kind of expert colleagues who they're working with, and thinking carefully about the choices that those teachers have made in terms of how they're teaching and what they're teaching.
Well, it's that complexity that you talked about, that we were talking about before the break. It's that there's so much to it, often going on at once, and what is going to come at you is often so difficult to predict. And it's learning to I can't put it better than this, but it's learning to be in that space and to be a teacher there. And it's that comes with a certain feeling. And I think when you've been teaching for a not even a long time, when you've been teaching when you've begun teaching and it started to feel normal to you, I think that can maybe, it's very easy to forget how strange it feels the first time you do it. I mean, I certainly can, I'm sure many people can, think of the very first time I had to stand in a room in front of people with all eyes on me, and I had to, teach a lesson. And it was terrifying. Absolutely. And now it seems so normal. It is quite literally an everyday occurrence for me now, and it is for any teacher. But that sort of I don't know. I don't quite how to put it, but it's almost the taking yourself seriously as a teacher, like fulfilling the role. I think getting back to Jenny's question, that's what I think it's what makes it such a great question, because you have an identity as a teacher, as Mr. or Miss
Mhm.
or Mrs. So and so, who they are you,
Mm.
but at the same hand, at exactly the same time, they sort of aren't you at the same time, and that's a very funny thing about teaching, sort of juggling those two identities.
Absolutely. And it's about developing that secure teacher identity. And
Mm,
part of what we're doing on the course is helping them to do that. And
mm,
so actually from the very first week that they're on campus, it was in Welcome Week, our director did a director's address to each of the cohorts, and it was all about professionalism. And so,
mm,
she made it very clear that from this moment on, these trainees who are going to be entering the profession are
mhm,
already professionals, and that we will be seeing them as professionals. And
mm,
the value of that was that although they do still come to campus and kind of casual clothes, and they're very much trainee student, they're students, they're learning, we
mm,
can see already that they feel different to perhaps the other students across the corridor who are studying sociology or criminology,
mm,
they because they already feel they have a place and that they have a direction. And so we can see that teacher identity forming even
mm,
before they've gone on placement. So our trainees are going on placement in the third trimester, so in the summer term. But we
mhm,
can see them becoming teachers in front of us, and we can see them thinking like teachers already. So we
mm,
feel very excited for them in terms of going on placement and then um, having an opportunity to really accelerate that professional development. But of course, it
mm,
will also be incredible personal development because
mm.
you learn so much, don't you, so fast when you're on placement and when you're immersed in the life of a school every day, all day for 8 weeks.
Oh, absolutely. Your head is spinning
Oh, yeah.
completely. And again, like you said, reflection. That's part of
Yes.
the reason why reflection is so important, because you simply need time and space, and I think guidance and support in how to make sense of what you've experienced and to learn from it, the good and the bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let me ask you then. I'm gonna throw a sort of few more questions at you here. Hope you don't mind. So
That's fine.
first one is, what advice do you wish you had known before you before you took your first step into the world of teaching, before you started your training? What do you wish you had known?
That's such a good question. And what's interesting about my training is that I did a B.Ed equivalent at Durham University a long, long time ago. And I
Mm,
was so full of my sense of purpose and vocation. I couldn't have been more excited about going and training to become a teacher. And
mm,
so I found the course incredibly fulfilling and um, very academically enriching as well. And
mhm,
what happened was that when I finished at Durham, I went straight to London. And I look back, I reflect on myself then, and I felt so incredibly prepared. And I walked
mm,
into this huge Victorian school in the East End of London, and I
mhm,
felt so confident. I felt
mhm.
very prepared,
Yeah.
and I had my first 2 years. I couldn't believe that I was doing the job I'd set out to do, and
Mm,
and I enjoyed it incredibly. I just enjoyed
mm,
it very, very much. But when I look back, I had been prepared by my course, and I think the course had helped me to hold on to that sense of purpose, so that when I
mm,
got into the classroom, it was just an exhilarating time. But I think my first two classes, when I look back, were very easy. They were very compliant children, and
mm,
in my third year of teaching, I had some non-compliant children. And I
mm,
think what I've been thinking about this question a lot, and I think what I wish I'd known more about was behavior management, because when I then had
mhm,
a non-compliant child, I really didn't feel very well prepared in that particular area. So I felt confident in terms of teaching and nurturing the children in my class if
Mhm.
they were doing the right thing. But as soon as I had a few children who decided not to do the right thing and refused to sit
Mm.
down on the carpet and things like that, I felt very
Mhm.
de-skilled. So I think
Mm.
behavior management is very, very important. I also was a very reflective teacher, even, back in the day, but I didn't have a framework. So I was
Mm.
naturally thoughtful, and I enjoyed thinking about my practice and my role in the classroom, but we hadn't been given the frameworks which are now available to really help you work through that whole process. And so I
Ah,
kind of wish that I'd had that kind of very clear framework which we now give our trainees, because that would have helped me kind of go through not just thinking about what I was doing, but also kind of action planning. What could I do next?
yeah, yeah. That really surprises me. That really does surprise me because it is such a sort of, you know, I mean, my course it was over 10 years ago now, and that reflection was such a big part of it. It kind of blows my mind. It sort of ever wasn't really, but yeah. Sorry, I interrupted you.
Yeah, no, it's fine. So yeah, so I just think that would have been really helpful. And the other thing I was really thinking about as well was those having difficult conversations. And I don't remember being taught how to have difficult conversations with
Mm.
parents or colleagues. And so actually what was interesting for me was I didn't necessarily need to have difficult conversations initially, be-
Mhm.
but when I came to Cambridge, it was having difficult conversations with parents who were quite forthright and had quite strong ideas about education, what they wanted
Mm.
for their children in the class. And it
Mhm.
was, so rather than having difficult conversations about behaviour or those kind of typical situations, it was more about knowing how to respond to very articulate parents who wanted
Mm.
to really
Okay.
dictate how I taught and what I did. And they were full of advice, but
Yeah.
how I should teach their particular child. So, and I,
Right.
I again, I felt a little bit de-skilled in that situation. So,
Ah.
yeah,
So
yeah,
lots of very, very, I'm sure, very well intentioned but unsolicited advice.
yeah,
So very, I can only I can appreciate how difficult that must be to deal with. So whilst also maintaining that professional identity as well, keeping that intact, but also dealing with these yeah, well intentioned but maybe not very
mm,
helpful advice, perhaps.
mm,
Wow. Yeah. No. Thank you. That's such a fantastic answer. I mean, it's so interesting what you say because for my own experience, for me, it was kind of the opposite with the behavior management side, where I was, and I wonder how common this is. I think maybe lots of people might have had a similar experience. I wonder. I was Mr. Strict in my first year. Right. I was, I know I've been drilled sort of on behavior management. I know this school's behavior policy is, very, very well, and I will absolutely enforce it consistently and fairly. And I don't, looking back on it, I don't think I'm not. I think it was a natural process. I understand why I was the way I was, and it got me through, and it did have its sort of good side.
mm,
However, the more I have taught every year, I felt myself become more, I suppose, more relaxed in the classroom. Really, I think you know. Again, sorry, I keep returning to Jenny's question, but I just think it's such a fantastic one. I think Jenny's question about their professional and personal identity. I think my first few years of teaching, I didn't have a personal identity. My
mm,
professional identity was so divorced from who I am that,
mm,
to all intents and purposes in the classroom, I was the teacher. But I don't think I wonder whether any of my children would have really had much sense of me as a person at all. I mean, they probably thought I did sleep in the classroom, to be
mm,
honest. They probably thought I did. I was just lived and breathed what I did, but I didn't have anything going on outside of it. Whereas I found, and a lot of this I have to give credit to my other, more experienced colleagues I've worked with who showed me how to do this. There is a way to bring yourself to the classroom and the things you like and the things you really do know about and your hobbies and interests and all that sort of stuff. There's a way to bring that in a professional manner, not just pure self-indulgence, But when you bring that in, the children, I think they respond to you very differently, and I think you get a better relationship with them. And I wish I'd figured that out sooner. I think it took me years to get there, and I don't know if I ever fully. I don't know if I actually fully am there yet. But yeah, that's sorry.
So I think in response to that, Will, I would say that's to do with your professional and your personal identities aligning. And I think
Mm,
that probably comes with time and confidence and that kind of teacher identity becoming kind of more secure, the secure teacher identity formation. And that I
mhm,
think, as we've already discussed with teaching, it's not a quick process, and
mm,
it does take time. And so I think it's natural for you as a new teacher, a brand new teacher, to perhaps
mhm,
have that very secure kind of professional identity. This is how we're going to do it. And you're focusing so much, aren't you, on the kind of nuts and bolts of teaching, your pedagogy, the
mhm,
content. There's so much to think about when you're delivering those early lessons. But as you
mm,
become more confident and familiar with teaching and the process of teaching, I guess it
mm,
is easier then to bring more of yourself into the
mhm,
classroom in that very professional way. And I found the same as I became more confident. I would give the children little nuggets from my life and tell them
mhm,
little stories. And they did. They loved it. And it was fantastic for that relationship building, for them to see me as a person. And
mm.
um, my love of books, for example, and reading was, it was very impactful. And
Hello, Ruth. Can you hear me?
making it, you can make it very, very fun. You can make learning fun through bringing in those aspects of your life.
Sorry, Ruth. I lost you for a few seconds there, but I gathered you were saying that it was bringing yourself, and when you were bringing in your sort of love of books and love of literature into the classroom, that's when the children were that was really resonating with them.
Yes, exactly. And that they could really that they then became very interested in reading and books. And if
Mm,
with with young children in the early years, if you bring in a picture book from home that you've read as a child, or you found in a
mm,
bookshop and that you really, really love, that they instantly become fascinated by it. And because
mhm,
you're their
mhm.
role model as a primary school teacher, you are their role model, and you're role modeling lots of behaviors all the time.
Mm, mm. Yeah, and again, it can be reciprocal as well, because if you share bits, from your personal life, the children will do the same. That they will tell you things they're doing on the weekend, or they'll sort of tell you about themselves in a way that lets you get a better sense of them, and also make better sense of them as a learner as well. I mean, teachers have this personal professional identity, but of course children are going to have for want of a better term, a classroom identity as well, won't they? They will be a different person in the classroom than they are at home. I mean, we've all had parents say, "Oh, they're not like this at home," and I'm sure they're absolutely right, because that's not really surprising. We are all different depending on the context, and children are no exception to that.
Yeah, and they have their learner identity in school, don't they? And I think that's,
Mm,
what's so important as a teacher, that you can give them so much confidence to boost that learner identity. And through
mm,
the feedback that we give the children and that relationship that we build with them, we can actually
mhm,
change the way they see themselves as a learner, which can be quite
mm,
transformative.
mm, mm. So, sorry. So, talking of transformation, there, I think that's such a crucial part of what teachers do, and also it's a big part of initial teacher training as well. I mean, especially to learn something over a year or several years, and to become a teacher, that is a process of transformation. So again, I asked you the question earlier. What advice do you wish you knew before you got into being a teacher? But more generally, you know what your students are like at university. Is there anything that you wish that if there's one thing that people could know before they begin teacher training, or a course, what would that be?
That's such a great question. I think that it's going to be demanding.
Mm-hmm.
I think a teacher training course is very demanding. I
Mm-hmm.
think it very, very rewarding. It's so broad, and the way that we are teaching our trainees to become teachers um, involves a lot of dialogue and discussion. So, the way we have structured our course and created our course,
Mm-hmm.
it's a kind of social constructivism. So there's lots and lots of group work. We're kind of co-constructing a lot of aspects of the course with the trainees. So
Mm-hmm.
we're asking them for their opinion, asking them to think through situations and scenarios. We're asking them to bring a lot of what they already know to the seminar room, and
Mm-hmm.
so it's very active. We're not standing in a lecture theatre with 200 students transmitting what we know about education. It's not like that at all. So what we need trainee teachers to know is that the best kind of learning from our perspective is that hands-on learning. And so we teach them through doing lots of different activities. So we've got lots of resources. So when we're teaching them about how to teach maths, they have lots of maths resources on the table. They experiment with maths resources. They might do some micro teaching. When we're teaching them about how to teach phonics, we get the puppets out. When we're doing English, we get them to go and choose a book and read the book to their peers. So there's lots and lots of peer talking, peer group work, lots of interaction. So we're asking them in a way to bring a lot of themselves onto campus and into the seminar room, and to build on their own experiences of being a learner, and also their perceptions of what a great teacher um, needs to be. So we're getting them to think like teachers very early on.
Brilliant, brilliant. Yeah, I'm really enjoying our conversation. We're going to take a quick break here to listen to the news, and we'll come
Okay.
back in a few minutes. And I want to carry on talking about the whole topic, really, about what makes a great teacher. Thank you very much, Ruth.
Okay, thanks.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Meet USA Study, your one-stop platform for guiding students through their college application journey. Access up-to-date resources on universities, programs, scholarships, and application requirements, all in one place. Get easy-to-access tools, personalised timelines, expert tips, application templates, and exclusive webinars with admissions officers to help your student stand out. Visit usastudy.co.uk or call Phil at 0800 612 8271 because every student deserves the opportunity to shine with USA Study.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
Schools Week reports that the government has abandoned a plan to abolish a rule capping the proportion of pupils oversubscribed free schools can select on faith at 50%. The previous Conservative government consulted last year and also included a plan to remove the block on new faith special schools. However, in an update from the Department for Education, the government has said it will not be moving forward with these proposals at this time. The statement also says they received 3,668 consultation responses and that 66% of respondents disagreed or strongly disagreed with both proposals. The cap had particularly hindered plans to open Catholic free schools because canon law prevents them from turning away pupils on the basis of their Catholic faith. The government's bill, if passed, would remove the presumptions that new schools must be academies. The Department for Education said this meant faith groups will be able to put forward proposals in response to an invitation from the local authority. The director of the Catholic Education Service welcomed the changes to the bill. The BBC covered the latest research findings around pupils and mobile phones, leading with this headline on its news website: "Mobile ban in schools not improving grades or behaviour, study suggests." The first study in the world to look at school phone rules alongside measures of pupil health and education was undertaken by the University of Birmingham, was peer-reviewed, and its findings published in The Lancet. It compared 1,227 students and their 30 different schools' rules about smartphone use. The paper says schools restricting smartphone use did not seem to be seeing their intended improvements on health, well-being and focus in lessons. However, the research did find a link between more time on phones and social media and worse mental well-being and mental health, less physical activity, poorer sleep, lower grades, and more disruptive classroom behaviour. Full details of the report and the study and the responses from a range of schools, pupils, and the Department for Education can be found on the BBC News website. The BBC in Scotland also reports on education news as it covers a story about data from a controversial survey which asked school pupils about their sexual experiences had been advertised for use by external researchers without participants' explicit consent. The Scottish Government Health and Wellbeing Census hit headlines in 2021 after asking highly personal questions of children as young as 14. Parents said they were not told the nature of the questions and were not asked to agree that their child's information could be shared. In the end, one half of Scotland's 32 councils pulled out of the survey, but 16 councils did go ahead. The survey was completed online, and the survey form said that information would not be shared with your teacher or your family. However, the data is now being offered publicly to external researchers via a website for a charity created by the Scottish Government in 2021, with a stated aim of making it easier to access data around health and well-being. According to the BBC report, the Information Commissioner's Office warned the Scottish Government in 2023 that the way they had gathered, stored and transferred the data created potential risks that children could be identified by third parties. A Scottish Government spokesperson said, "All participants in the survey had the opportunity to skip questions they did not wish to answer." Parents have said that when they found out their children had taken part in the survey and understood the questions they'd been asked, including about penetrative sex and contraception use, they'd asked for their child's data to be scrubbed. They were told that this would not be possible. Additional detail and response from academics, schools and parents can be found on the BBC Scotland website. In Northern Ireland, media outlets have reported on criticism for Queen's University Belfast after its decision to open a campus in India was announced. This announcement comes after it said there would be 270 job cuts in Northern Ireland. The University and College Union, which represents many lecturers and support staff, described the move as scandalous. At the time the job cuts were announced, BBC News Northern Ireland said it had seen documents which suggested Queen's was facing a deficit of more than £11 million. UCU General Secretary Joe Grady said, "It is scandalous that QUB is putting massive amounts of money into a new campus halfway around the world, all the while axing jobs in Belfast." Speaking on Good Morning Ulster, another UCU representative said the university had not provided a justified business case. QUB defended its decision to open the campus in India, saying, "We need to balance our income." Finally, Schools Week reports that Education Mutual, who provide insurance cover for thousands of schools, will now cover legal costs for staff who want to sue social media trolls. It comes after Bridget Phillipson said she was concerned about the rise in parental complaints and staff time they take up. Education Mutual will start to cover all its member schools' legal fees should they want to challenge a troll for libelling staff online, including sending cease and desist letters to people who post libel. Some unions already offer this type of support, but not all. Further details can be found on the Schools Week website. This has been Teachers Talk Radio News with Joe Fox.
Okay, and we are back, the Saturday Social, with me, Will Mercer, talking to Ruth Platt. And we are going to continue our conversation about initial teacher training and what makes a good teacher. If you would like to ask a question, and please do so on the Podbean app, where you can listen live, ask questions, and we can respond to them. So over to you, Ruth. You were talking earlier, you were giving a lovely example of the social constructivist way you might approach teaching a teacher with your students. You know, if they're learning about how to teach a maths lesson, you'll get the maths resources out and, you know, go from there. Okay, but let me give you a hypothetical. Let's say one of those students turns around and they say, forget all the social constructivist stuff, just tell me what I need to do. Just give me a PowerPoint on how to be a great teacher. What would you say to that person?
Well, I think that's a really interesting question, and it certainly hasn't happened this year with any of our trainees. And I think that's to do with the fact that we've been very transparent with the course in the selection events that we've had and the open days. We've been very clear from the very beginning what kind of course it is, and I think through the interview process as well, the trainees have developed a really good sense of what it's like to train with us to be a teacher. We also have our trainees with us, our current cohort of trainees. We have a few student ambassadors who've been attending open days and helping us with the interview days, and they're able to give a very clear picture of what it's like to be on the course and the type of learning that future trainees or potential applicants can experience. So we're very, very clear with it from very early on. So when they arrive for Welcome Week in September, there are no surprises really.
Okay, so why this approach? Why do you think that's the best way to help someone learn how to be a teacher?
Well, I think it's how we believe people learn best in every subject, but particularly with teacher training. So the role of language in learning is seen by many people, from Vygotsky to the kind of people who have researched dialogic teaching and oracy, that talk is a central part, is a tool for learning, it's a vehicle for learning. And through being able to articulate our ideas and ask questions, the learning experience is much, much deeper. And so we want our trainees to have these very deep, enriching learning experiences, which will upskill them and provide them with a kind of a wealth of understanding and ideas for going into the classroom. So we're balancing this need for them to have a really good understanding of what it means to be a teacher and the theory and the research around, you know, in education. But we also want them to feel really confident that they know how to set up an activity or use a certain resource to help children to learn. So we're wanting to ensure that both of those pieces are there. But all of the research shows that dialogic approach to teaching is a way of developing critical thinking skills. It helps to develop the ability to converse at a higher level, and it helps to shape that thinking.
I mean, I to return to, I think, where we were at the very beginning of the show, I was asking about how much of what we learn, how much of what you need to be a teacher is a case of knowing a skill, and how much of it is, I suppose, having a disposition. And I think if I understand you correctly, you're saying that a lot of that disposition can sort of be taught, and can be taught in this very hands-on way. In other words, the way to learn how to be a teacher is to sort of learn that feeling of what it is like to be in the classroom, making learning happening. And a really good way for someone to become comfortable with that is for to do it in as hands-on way, rather than sort of, read a PowerPoint or whatever it might be.
Well, it sort of goes back to John Dewey, doesn't it? And that kind of learning through doing idea that is so important. So yes, but I think that disposition piece is important, and I think when we're interviewing our trainees, that the selection events, that we're looking for that sense of a disposition, that sense of, we're not looking for the finished article because we're going to spend 3 years with them, but we're looking for people with that potential to connect with their purpose and to be willing to learn in this very dynamic environment. We're not expecting them to be assessed. Our assessments are not exam based, but they are challenging in many ways, because we ask them to do a piece of reflective writing as one of their assessments. We ask them to design an activity and create a narrated PowerPoint and upload it. So, there are lots of different ways. It's a multimodal assessment approach, which is pulling on different skills. So if they're A-level students and they've got really good at writing kind of essays, this is going to be something very different to them. So we are also looking for people who are willing to be challenged and willing to try new things and to upskill, so that they can, complete their assignments successfully. But that's part of being a teacher, isn't it? You're constantly having to upskill. You're constantly having to learn new information.
It makes you a better teacher, is to always be remaining a learner forever is a really great way to be a better teacher, because you always have to remember what it is like to be learning something, and the experience of that will help you be a better teacher to children, for sure. So I mean, let's say you are 18 or 21 or whatever, and you're applying for one of these courses, or you're considering whether it's right for you. I suppose what's coming through to me here is, you want to have that reflectiveness, that openness to learn, that comfort level with a complex environment that has an element of unpredictability to it. You have to be able to sort of learn, to carry on learning, to have a certain humility about it, and to accept that you're going to make mistakes. And yes, some of them will be public, but that's okay, because with enough reflection and with the right amount of resilience, those are learning opportunities. And you will learn from your mistakes in the same way that we ask children to learn from their mistakes.
Yeah.
Is there anything I'm missing there? I'm kind of running through a sort of ingredient list there of those sorts of things that are needed for success, for real success as a teacher. Is there anything, do you think, I'm missing there?
I think there's maybe that sense of responsibility. So I think we're expecting a lot from our trainees, that sense of being a role model. So we're expecting them to take this course seriously. This is preparing them to be a teacher, and that's a very pivotal, it's a very powerful position within society. And I think sometimes that's overlooked. I think the role of a primary school teacher is it comes with it's a privilege to be a primary school teacher, and within that role you have a lot of authority over a lot of children. So you need to approach it with a level of responsibility and self-awareness, and a willingness to reflect. I've said it a lot of times, but to reflect on yourself, on your practice, and to bear in mind issues around social justice, and thinking about how your interactions with the children and the parents may impact them then and in the future. So it's a very important job within our world, in our society, and I don't think it should be taken on lightly.
No, absolutely. And there is, I think there's that. I know you talked about difficult conversations being something that you really learns by doing, and that being quite a challenging thing to learn. And I think part of that, not the only reason, but part of that is because you're all humans. We all have emotions, and we all react to things, and we might be feeling judged or criticized. But as the teacher, with your professional identity, you have to park that to some extent. You have to have that self-control, and to take your responsibility seriously. And whatever you might be feeling, especially in a negative situation, you have to sort of just put that to one side, and that,
Yeah.
that can be tough to do, and that can be tough to do, especially when you've got so many other things going on, and it's 9:30 on a Saturday, on a Tuesday, and you didn't expect this to happen, and you've got to teach a lesson right now, and everything's going wrong and all of that sort of stuff. It can ask a lot of people's what's the word I'm looking for? Is it resilience? Perhaps it's their sort of inner strength, I suppose.
Yeah, so it involves that inner strength and resilience, but also it just also involves that kind of connecting to that professionalism and having that professional identity, very securely in place, and feeling confident that you can navigate your way through these difficult situations. It's having that inner confidence that, yes, this is a challenging situation I'm in, but I have the tools and the disposition to navigate this successfully and for the outcome to be positive.
Fantastic. Okay, I'm aware of the time. We don't have much of it left. We're going to take one final quick break. But when we come back, Ruth, if it's okay with you, I'd like to ask you a bit more about that inner confidence, that inner strength, and where it comes from.
Okay, great.
Brilliant. Speak in a moment.
Okay.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Meet USA Study, your one-stop platform for guiding students through their college application journey. Access up-to-date resources on universities, programs, scholarships, and application requirements, all in one place. Get easy-to-access tools, personalised timelines, expert tips, application templates, and exclusive webinars with admissions officers to help your student stand out. Visit usastudy.co.uk or call Phil at 0800 612 8271 because every student deserves the opportunity to shine with USA Study.
And we are back at Saturday Social, and I am Will Mercer. And I'm talking with Ruth Platt about initial teacher training. So, Ruth, earlier we were talking, just before the break, we were talking about a sort of inner strength and a resilience that will get you through, some negative experiences or challenging times. So, I think that's so important. I think we all have it. And even when you do have it, you sometimes wish you could have a little bit more of it, But where does it come from? Where does that inner? I mean, let's say you have a student who comes to you and says, "I'm really struggling. I don't see myself as a teacher. I don't feel I am the right person to do this job." What sort of advice would you give them in that situation?
Well, I think over a 3-year course, it's very typical for the trainees to have a wobble and to be able to give them the time to unpack that kind of those feelings of not being able to do the role effectively is important, and identifying what it is that they need in terms of building them back up. So it might be something to do with like a negative experience or some difficult feedback they've received, or a lesson that's gone wrong. But it's about unpacking that and giving that trainee time to explore those feelings before making a plan and a kind of set of next steps, really.
And now, the answer to this question may simply be it depends, and it depends on the person. But I'm going to ask it anyway. How long does it take? Do you find, in your experience, do you find there is a certain length of time at which someone starts to feel and act like a teacher, like someone who belongs doing what they're doing? Or is that kind of a silly question, and really does it just depend on the person?
So I think it really, really depends on the person. And because this is a brand new course, we're still in our first year of delivery. So I haven't had that experience of seeing our trainees develop over a 3-year period yet. We're on that journey. But we've already seen an amazing transformation amongst our trainees from September to now. Just over the last few months, they're presenting themselves differently, they're thinking differently. So that progress is very evident. In terms of how long, I don't think you can put a number on it, because it depends what people come to the course with. It depends on their previous experience. And just within one cohort, the trainees may be young, but they come with such a wide range of various experiences. Some have worked as a TA, some have run swimming lessons, some have worked with brownies, some have had very little time in school. So they're all coming from different points. Some have had very, very positive school experiences, and some have had very negative school experiences as children. And they're all bringing these experiences to the course. And they'll all be on their own journey. And I think thinking of training to become a teacher is really important to think of it as a journey. And there will be highs and lows and mountains to overcome and climb. But then even once the course is finished and they've trained and they've got their qualified teaching status, they still have 2 more years in England as early career teachers, where they're still considered kind of novices, and so I think we all recognize that it takes a long time to become a teacher. And I'm not sure I could ever give a number to that, a number of years. For some people, that secure teacher identity is there and they fly straight away. Others, it takes time, it takes careful coaching and mentoring. And I think that mentoring that they receive in school, our trainees receive in school, can be really pivotal. And the trainees' relationship with their mentor and their mentor's approach to mentoring and shaping that trainee's learning can be, very different. And it can accelerate the learning, and sometimes it can hinder that learning. But so everybody, I think that's what's really important to understand. Just like with a class of children, everybody's different and come from a very different place. With our trainees, it's the same. And what we have to do is have that kind of growth mindset that, you've all made it through the interview, you've all got the UCAS points, we've seen potential in you, and we're on that journey with you. We're doing everything we can. And I say that to them, we're doing everything we can to support you through this. And yes, they're going to be good days and difficult days. But over the 3 years, and I tell the trainees, I said, you're thinking like teachers already. We're only halfway through the first year. This is amazing. And so that's very exciting.
Well, as I suppose, to the sort of ingredient list I mentioned earlier, we have to add patience as well, because like you say, it's absolutely right. Maybe it might be years of training. You have the 2 years of being the early careers teacher. But even when you do that, you're not finished. I don't think anyone is ever finished, are they? You're always learning.
Yeah,
absolutely. So I thank you for mentioning the mentors as well, because that's something that I haven't really, it hasn't come up yet, but it's so crucial. And when I think back to my own teacher training, I was on a skit. It was a 1-year course, a lot of time spent in school, and you have a very intense relationship with your mentor. And that can be both positive and negative, and they can absolutely be this wonderful influence on you. Or, of course, it's such an intense relationship. When it goes wrong, it can go very wrong. And so I think it's so important to get that right as well. And I think it can be quite hard, especially if you are a young person and, maybe you've never had a job before, let's say you've never been in a relationship like this before, where if it's not working out for you, it can be very hard, I think, to sort of, to speak to someone about that or to raise a concern. But I think it's very important that people do that because, like I say, it's absolutely crucial to your success on any course. And your experience with teacher training, it lives on with you, I think, for the rest of your career, really. I think whether it's very positive and you take these wonderful lessons you've learned with you, or if you're unlucky, if it's a less positive experience, if it's a negative one, maybe you will react to that, and your reaction against that will very much inform who you are as a teacher. So I suppose what I'm saying is, either way, it's always going to influence your career much longer term. All right, so we have we have a little bit of time left, maybe time for one or two more questions.
Will,
Sorry, please.
in response to your point about the mentoring, I just
Yeah,
wanted
please
to
do,
jump
please.
in and say that we really acknowledge that. So we actually are spending quite a lot of time training our mentors, and through building a partnership, we're working very closely with our partnership schools to make sure that they understand the role of the mentor, so that we're hoping that the mentors that have chosen to work with us will be able to really support our trainees. And there's a new role now as well. We have a role called the lead mentor, and so they are part of the team. We've all had lead mentor training, which is a postgraduate certificate in mentoring, and our role is really to support the mentor. So we'll be going into schools and bridging that gap between university and school, and making sure that the mentor is feeling well prepared and supported in their role, and troubleshooting if and when we need to. So we're trying to really build that kind of team around the trainee, but also acknowledge the importance that the mentor's role plays in that process, and to ensure that relationship is positive. And we've also spent a lot of time talking to our trainees about their kind of responsibility in terms of making it a positive relationship, and the things that they can do to make a good first impression, and then to really nurture that relationship while they're on placement.
Oh, absolutely. Because sorry, I realise now I didn't mean to paint too dour a picture. No, you're absolutely right. I was lucky. I had a great mentor who had a brilliant relationship with, and it can be, it's such a wonderfully positive thing that can be so enriching if it's when it's right. It's brilliant. So one of the things I really that's endlessly fascinating about teaching is it's always changing. The world is a changing place, of course, and teaching no exception at all. So let me ask you to, and I know I'm not going to ask you to look into your crystal ball or anything, but what's your sense of current trends and things that are changing with teaching, particularly with the training of teachers? Are there any trends that are happening right now that you see being much stronger in the future, and vice versa? Are there things that maybe happen now that you think won't be as much of a factor in the future?
It's ever so difficult to know what's going to happen with what's happening in schools, because with the change of government in this country, we're waiting for that, the review of the curriculum, and things could change quite dramatically. So I think what's really important in terms of teacher training is preparing our trainees for change, and ensuring that they have the skills to go into a rapidly changing environment, and to feel confident that they can adapt what they've learned with us in a new kind of a new age, a new curriculum. And it's difficult to know. It's hard to know how to predict, but I think the way we're approaching training teachers with our simulation-based learning, and the centrality of reflective practice, is upskilling them to be able to cope with a world we don't know. We don't know what it's going to look like in a few years' time. So preparing them for the unknown, I suppose.
No, absolutely. It's I mean, I think back to my own, I know, compared to, there's lots of people with far more experience than me, but even in my own teaching, I look at some things and how different they were 10 years ago, and sometimes it really shocks you. I mean, AI is obviously the one that we're very aware of right now, and like you say, curriculum review coming up as well. I mean, when I started teaching, it was 2014, so we had just had the new curriculum coming in. So I sort of, fortunate or unfortunate, depends how you look at it, but I suppose I was teaching at a time there was a relative period of stability from the curriculum sense, in that it was all new, but it wasn't going to change, and it didn't change for some years. Whereas, like you say, who knows what will happen now in the future. All right, so Ruth, I've really enjoyed our time together, but I'm very aware that it's coming to an end now. So I don't think I can summarize everything, because I'm just not that articulate. But it just sounds to me like, it's such. Okay. Let me put it this way: you've absolutely convinced me of how rewarding it must be. The real purpose that comes with teaching teachers,
Mm.
initial teacher training. I absolutely get it. That you are, giving people the tools to be reflective. You're giving them chances to be resilient, to build their subject knowledge, to feel what it is like to be a teacher, to build that professional identity, to have those difficult conversations, to juggle all the different roles, all the different responsibilities that you have, all those wonderful things. So yeah, I think you put it brilliantly right at the beginning. You talked about the magic that's happening in the classroom. It's fantastic,
Yeah. And I think sorry.
Sorry.
And I think, I think it's my work is a privilege, and the work I'm doing with the team is a privilege. And actually, we get to see magic on the campus as well, and seeing our trainees transform and become teachers, and to be on that journey with them really is amazing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Right, well, that's got me in a very positive frame of mind for Monday. Now I'm going to go in with a big, I'm going with this renewed sense of purpose, which is hard to come by actually. In January and February when it's so dark and so gloomy and all that stuff. Anyway, Ruth, it's been absolutely fantastic. I've really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you so much for appearing.
Oh, thank you for the opportunity to chat about initial teacher training. It's been great. Thank you, Will.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.